Hola, my fellow ferals. We hope your week has been amazing, don't we, Shane?
Absolutely.
We have a pretty amazing lineup of controversial and widely debated topics in store for you all today. Both Shane and myself feel quite passionate about these issues and are very excited to share our experiences and opinions with you all today. First, before we start, I personally just wanted to say a massive, huge thank you on behalf of the Brain Reaction team for everyone whom has been following our podcast and Facebook page. I received a few emails of people whom have reiterated the reason why we decided to begin this project in the first place. And I'd like to read one or two out to you if you guys don't mind. You don't mind, do you, Shane?
So happy that people are writing in. Keep it up because it gives us a lot more to talk about and it's going to get you guys more interested in it.
Awesome. So I'm just going to keep these people anonymous because I feel
It's me.
I don't know if they actually want their names out there or anything like that. So I'll just keep them anonymous and I just read their messages. So the first short message was off a girl I actually know, not that well, but through mutual friends. And I was quite surprised when she actually messaged me. It reads, "Hey Jay, just listening to your podcast. Thank you for talking about positive health and body image. I, for one, have struggled with my weight and have worked on being the best person I can be. It means the world that there are people like you that can talk about it." Awesome.
Yeah.
That's exactly why we're doing what we're doing, so we can make an impact in the society and in our suburbs around us.
And I had a couple of people who did talk to me as well and said that they appreciated us going into a topic like that and getting as deep into it as we did because a lot of people face it quietly.
Yeah. And it's something that's kind of pushed under the rug and people just put their head in the sand about it because it's not like something physical that can be fixed. It's more of a mental struggle, and so I feel that's why it was important to address.
Yeah, fuck yeah. I'm glad we brought it up.
And then I'll just read the second one. It's a bit longer. So it was off another girl, and she wrote in, "I heard your Brain Reaction podcast. It was awesome, and I'd be happy to share with you the unspoken reality of eating disorders. The ugly truth, if you like. I think it's important people know just how horrific they are to every aspect of your life, and it's interesting that obesity numbers rapidly increased as diet products dominated the shelves. You look at ancient civilizations, they were documented overweight, but not to this scale. Proof these products don't work, and in fact, the low-calorie option leave you unsatisfied, meaning you need more of it anyway. Anyway, it's an ugly, ugly illness that in public you see one thing, but behind closed doors is the illness, and that literally, I think, if someone was a fly on the wall, sometimes they would be horrified. And also body dysmorphia. A lot of people say to me, if you think you're fat, what must you think of me? And get quite annoyed or insulted by eating disorder sufferers for this reason. But it's about the distorted image we have of our bodies, which manifests from so many different factors like trauma." She then later went on to go and ask me for a coffee, and I actually decided that maybe in a few episodes' time, that maybe we should actually bring this person on the show herself.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we have been planning on doing, is in the future we're looking at getting some people onto the show to talk about the things that they know most and that they love and that they can give us a good conversation about.
Yeah, well, I was quite surprised that she messaged me in the first place and got so in-depth about her own personal experiences. But I think it's awesome that the show has opened up an opportunity for people to be able to talk about it so freely and comfortably.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, so I'll be keeping both these individuals anonymous, but you know who you are, and I really appreciate the time that you guys put in to let me know about your personal struggles. So moving on now to our trending topics of the week. First on our list is the story about the Australian journalist found guilty in Cairo for spreading false news and supporting the blacklisted Brotherhood, as the ABC News said.
Look, this topic's been going on for a while. It's been going. His trial's gone for about 6 months now, and basically governments changed hands in Egypt about twice in the past couple of years, back and forth between Islamic fundamentalists and a more open and secular government. And still, even at this point, I don't think they've decided on what they really want, and the violence has just been continuing. But interestingly, when the last changeover happened, the government that got into power following the Muslim Brotherhood being sacked, this Peter Gressy, who was an Al Jazeera journalist, was just basically producing what I would say personally is unbiased news, just reporting the facts.
What a journalist does best.
What they're meant to do best. A couple of people in Australia could probably take note from that one. But he was basically just talking about what was happening. But because it was unfavourable to the government that had just gone in, it was deemed as being propaganda and supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. So basically, he was jailed for it. There's been a movement within the journalism community across the world. You might have seen photos of journalists with like a hashtag, free the Al Jazeera journalists, with their hands over their mouth or duct tape or something like that. Because this is a huge infringement of freedom of speech,
Definitely.
freedom of the media as well, and freedom of information. So at this point, outlook for him, not so good, because although he got 7 instead of 15 years, which was the maximum sentence, 7 years in an Egyptian jail, I can assure you, is no holiday. It's not like 7 years in an Australian jail.
And we're not too sure on our government's opinion and view on it at the moment. We haven't really heard too much news on it, so that's why we didn't really make it a major topic today.
Oh, well, Tony Abbott made a brief phone call to the Egyptian president in regards to the sentence that was handed down the other day. Obviously, he wasn't too convincing because nothing really happened, but it does look like the family, fortunately, of Peter are about to launch an appeal against the sentence.
Yeah, they're fighting quite hard.
Yeah,
I've
because
seen that in the news a few times.
This is absolute bullshit, and it was just a show trial from the very beginning, and this man has honestly, not even in my opinion, objectively, this man has done nothing wrong. But anyway, if you want to look up on that one, it's headlines at the moment. It's easy to find out information about.
Just Google Peter Agresta and all the information will come up about that. We'll also link.
But moving on to another topic as well that's trending at the moment. You might not have heard about this one. In fact, you probably haven't, because I didn't until the other day. But with all the information surrounding repeals to Medicare and the state of public health care in places like the United States and Australia, it seems like India has made a big step in leading the way. The health minister in India has made plans to give 50 essential medicines be available completely free to its public.
Huge step within India.
Yeah.
I don't really know much on this topic. I actually just kind of found out about that then.
Yeah.
So
basically, look, 50 of these drugs address, apparently, 75% of the healthcare needs of the majority in India. And they're planning to make it free to it and available to everyone from birth to death. And that's what the Union Health Minister, Harsh Vardhan, told the Hindu Times. So India itself, it's no surprise, it isn't a relatively affluent country. A lot of its 1 billion people are well below the poverty line. And there are a lot of things, poor sanitation, poor water health, and poor nutrition has led to a lot of poor health in its people. So, going back to what we were talking about last week, to have a healthy population is really across the board beneficial, not only to society, but also to your economy. And I would really be interested to see what happens in India in the next couple of years because of this.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and hopefully Australia can kind of take a leaf from the Indian book within that.
Yeah, moving to something health related, but a little bit more morbid.
This is very interesting, I believe. So at the moment, there's a massive epidemic, so an outbreak of a disease, a very infectious disease called Ebola, I believe.
Nasty disease, kind of the stuff of nightmares.
In West Africa, what countries was it again?
So you've got Guinea-Bissau, you've got Liberia,
and Sierra Leone.
Yeah.
So there's a kind of out of control outbreak of this disease in the country at the moment, and basically it's kind of scaring a lot of people because up to 350 people have already passed away since February from the disease. And basically what the disease does is puts holes in your veins and you kind of bleed internally.
Yes, you bleed out your ass, your ears, your eyes, your nose, and your mouth.
It's not a fun
and with a
sickness to have.
Oh, I couldn't imagine. With a 90% mortality rate in some cases, look, don't get all scared. This isn't the kind of disease that can travel very far because basically if you have it, you're not in a condition to move around or do much anything.
But there is a massive demand for aid to be in that region, West Africa at the moment, and so we just kind of wanted to make you guys aware about it because it's not something that many of us would know about because it's not really reported about much.
Yeah, and the fear is that, mutation in the disease could mean that its incubation period might be more prolonged and people are able to travel around with it and drop it off much further away than where the outbreak is at the moment.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, poor education, poor sanitation in the area has led people to not seek help medical help, if they feel like they are infected or family members are. And it's just adding to the crisis over there.
A lot to do with the culture and suspicions and things like that. Myths in the local area where people kind of believe, no, we're not going to go to the doctors or the hospital because it's going to spread even more if we go there.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit unfortunate.
Back home with some good news. So as of just the other night, the UN has rejected Australia's, quote, feeble bid to strip Tasmania's forest World Heritage status. So if we could do that again up in the Great Barrier Reef, that'd be excellent. But 74,000 hectares of Tasmania's World Heritage area has been now barred from logging as the UN has rejected our attempt, well, the government's attempt anyway, to delist it as a World Heritage Area so they could go in and log it. So if anyone's ever been to Tasmania, you might know how absolutely stunningly beautiful it is and what an absolute tragedy it would be if it was logged. Because at the moment, only about 43% of the original forest still exists. And although it's huge in any respects, the way the logging industry works in Australia, that could very, very, very quickly change.
Exactly.
So basically, I did read that the UN's finding was that to delist the forests would be a detriment to the human experience in the local area and to Australia as a whole. I think they're insinuating that,
as well as all the inhabitants of that area and the animals
and look, this week just keeps on getting better back home. As also, earlier on in the week, the High Court of Australia declared that the school chaplaincy program is unconstitutional.
I feel like we all need to clap this.
Yeah. So one of the government's key points when getting in during the election was that they would forward $244 million to have public schools have basically a chaplain or a priest hanging around. So
not too sure why, considering we're a secular country, and the fact that even if there were chaplaincy programs in schools, the children would need their parents' permission, and a lot of the time children are sent to public schools because their parents aren't believers in any particular faith.
Yeah.
So
that, and of course, like, we know how eager chaplains are to hang around children and all, but like when you are trying to move public education as a whole away from religious systems to give a more open, unbiased, and impartial experience in education, yeah, it just seems like the government's really trying to take a couple of steps backwards in terms of education. So yeah,
those are our trending topics for today.
Yeah, some good and bad news, but we'll see how it goes next week as well. And so now that we've gone through some of the week's more important topics, let's do what we do best and talk a little bit of shit, shall we?
Yeah, definitely. What do you mean talk a little bit of shit? We're going to be giving our good opinions on a topic that we're both quite passionate about. I wouldn't necessarily call this a shit topic.
Not this one in particular, even though it probably does have actually a little bit to do with actual shit in a part of it. But
that leads to E. coli. But anyway, we'll leave that for a couple of minutes.
Vegetarianism and veganism,
yes.
And the growing trend in Australia and across the world at the moment anyway, in the amount of people that are beginning to adopt it and open up to it.
I definitely think that comes down to reasons of more awareness with what and how meat affects the human body and how dairy products affect the human body. A lot of people are also lactose intolerant these days.
Yeah, but you know what?
It's actually a normal thing.
Yeah, if you're lactose intolerant, you're normal. You will have mutant genes if you can accept bovine milk.
Exactly. So I myself am a vegan, and you yourself are
a vegetarian.
A vegetarian, yeah. So if you don't mind me asking, how did you yourself start the journey?
Well, I've been asked this a few times. What's the most succinct way I can put it? I started off as just a bit of a health experiment. I remember I did it as like a 1 month challenge, and I think by the end of the month I was like, oh, this really isn't that hard, and it's not that bad. And I kept at it because I wanted to see how it would affect my energy levels and things like that. And it boosted my energy and my ability to train and perform aerobically. But yeah, as well as that, I found I was pushed into cooking more adventurously, and I was finding out a lot of cool foods.
I definitely find that as well.
Yeah, I was able to taste food better. I know that sounds a little bit odd, but you begin to stop covering things in sauce, salt and pepper and things, and you just start to enjoy food a little bit more. You feel less lethargic. after eating a lot of dense meat. And I found like very quickly I was really turning my nose up at the smell of meat, which I used to love. Like, look, don't get me wrong, I miss a good steak. I can't lie and say that I don't, but suddenly I can't stand the smell of chicken or bacon cooking, and a lot of other meats. And as well as that, look, along the way, I found out a lot of other things that kept me into vegetarianism, like the sustainability aspects, and of course, the humane things, which I think were a lot of the reason why you turned to veganism.
Yes, well, basically, I actually started as a pescatarian, and basically what that means is that I got rid of all meat products and all poultry, but I still kept fish and dairy products. But I was finding that I actually had a lot of health issues to do with dairy products. My body wasn't taking it too well, so I ended up cutting them out altogether, and my skin became much clearer. I wasn't as lethargic anymore. And then eventually I also got rid of fish, and then I became a full-on vegan, and I think that's also part of an experiment I did. Basically, I think it was a 21-day trial kind of experiment to see if I could do it, and honestly, it was like one of the easiest things I've ever done in my life. But I always got the question, how do you do it? What do you eat? What don't I eat? Are you kidding me?
Like that's what I was going to ask. Did you find it challenging to step into veganism?
Definitely not. Like, obviously there's the issue where when you're going into supermarkets you kind of have to check things a bit more diligently, but isn't everyone doing that these days anyway, to make sure that they're not having too much sugar or salt and things like that in their diet?
A lot of people are doing that more so now, but like even today I found out that a lot of wine, oh god damn it,
I know, it's
has like animal products in.
We're both wine lovers here. Me myself, I love a good red wine.
I'm surprised you can't hear the bottles clanking around in the back right now.
Yeah, we'll leave that for after the show. But anyway, we both love a good wine, and yeah, so basically egg and milk products are used to...
And fish as well.
And fish products.
Why is fish in wine? What place does it have?
And so we're quite shocked at that, so now we both kind of have to, maybe I haven't been a proper vegan this whole time, I've been drinking a bit of wine on the weekends.
But look, you can be forgiven because you didn't know that one. So.
Yeah, exactly, so I'm going to be a bit more diligent of that. But basically, when I became a vegan, I could train better, I could run longer, I could wake up and not be as tired, so many benefits. Plus, I'm a huge animal activist, you could say. I'm one of the annoying friends that is constantly posting on Facebook pictures of animals being tortured in order to grain into people's minds what's happening in order for them to be able to eat the meat that they eat every day. And so basically that we kind of really wanted to talk about it today because it's something that's really prominent in both our lives, and it's also a trending kind of popular culture thing that's happening right now in society.
Yeah, like a little while ago, I used to find every time I mentioned I was a vegetarian, I'd sometimes get, oh wow, really? Like, how do you do it? Yada yada. Why do you do it? That's a really annoying question. I fucking hate that question. But more and more so, I'm finding people like, oh yeah, me too. Or yeah, so is my friend, so is my sister, so is my brother. So it's far less rare. And you think coming from an Australian culture where, you know, fucking throw a steak on the barbie, all that shit, like it's a little bit frowned upon. I think maybe a couple of years ago it probably would have been, but people are definitely broadening their minds.
And something I've definitely noticed, unfortunately, is that the closer you head towards the sitting, the more acceptable it kind of is when I get questions about it. However, unfortunately, where I live in Blacktown, in the western suburbs, it's not something that's really popular or being taken on yet, and
agreed, yeah.
There's not as many health food stores
like,
or options.
I can't go into your local or my local pub and expect to get, you know, a relatively satisfying vegetarian meal. You know, they cater very well to if you wanted to have a steak or a chicken, but you know, if you are after, I don't know, maybe a lentil dish or something like that, shit out of luck, you know. But I think that's slowly changing, and people are becoming very health conscious. I think Australia's always had this very, you know, fitness centered culture, and you know that we enjoy doing sport, we enjoy eating well and being fit, despite the fact that the news tells us we're fat every week. But no, I think the opposite is kind of true.
Yeah, definitely. And just putting my opinion on the whole, when you go out to eat, that you just gave. When all my friends would know this, and a guy I went on a date with a few weeks ago. Basically, I go out and I'm the most annoying person in the restaurant because I sit there and I'm like, hey, can I please have steamed vegetables without butter, without etc. 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 No cheese, no, and it's kind of frustrating, especially because I live in the West, so I'm constantly having to either cook at home, which I love. If I could have gone on MasterChef instead of Top Model, I probably would redo that. But yeah, it's definitely frustrating, and
Yeah, like I would like to mull over quickly the sustainability aspects when it comes to eating meat. Like the livestock industry is one of the most unsustainable things and so damaging to the environment, and to our future prospects of being alive as a human race. Something like 40% of all rainforests in the last 40 years were cleared for cattle pasture. That is unbelievable. The World Hunger Program, which is part of the UN, calculated that if world harvests were distributed equitably and taken away from feeding livestock, we could easily feed on a vegan diet 6 billion people. I'm not saying everyone has to eat vegan. Completely. No, I don't believe that. Like,
yeah, exactly. That's not
if you want. I don't give a shit. And it's the same when I say I'm a vegetarian. Someone's like, you're vegetarian. My food shits on you. Fuck off. It's none of your business. I'll eat what I want.
That's not what we're about. We're not about pushing our beliefs onto other people. We're just giving our opinions, and we're showing you some credible facts.
Yeah, and for all those people who ask, here you go. Listen up. If you're really interested when you say that question, listen up, because we're explaining it now. So look, another thing as well, like food productivity as well when looking after agriculture, like the grazing lands and the amount of land you have to convert just to keep livestock compared to crops, like vegetable crops, is astounding. The amount of methane that gets produced, something like 75 kilograms per cow per year of methane, and when you've got literally billion of cattle roaming the earth at the moment, probably not a good thing.
Yeah.
So you've got other things like soil erosion and lifestyle diseases. Here's another one. So fresh water. So we're getting to the point now where people are starting to get a bit thirsty. It might lead to wars down the track. We'll get back to you on that one. But livestock is the biggest water footprint on the planet out of any industry. So it is believed that the standard meat-eating diet requires around about, in litres, because I'm calculating this off gallons, it's about 18,000 litres of water per day. That's because
incredible.
This isn't what you're doing. This is drinking water for animals, irrigation of crops to feed the animals, processing meat, washing the meat. Whereas a vegetarian diet only equates to around about 1,600. So dropping a factor of 10 there in water. So because basically you don't go through all that, do you?
And just another little fact I wanted to throw in there about cows. So basically, opponents to the grain-fed beef will cite that, in particular in the USA, there's not as many facts within Australia at the moment with the meat industry. However, in the USA, there's lots of outbreaks of E. coli, which is linked but not exclusively due to high-density fed lotting and the subsequent effect of cattle standing in their own effluent. And by effluent, we mean shit, people. Mm-hmm. Poo. So these are a bunch of cows standing around in their poo all day, every day, not very happy. And so basically the reaction of the industry to this problem has been to traditionally use ammonium hydroxide. I repeat, ammonium hydroxide. In other terms, bleach, to treat the meat.
Yep.
So yeah, it's something.
I used to work in a butcher. Funny that.
That is quite hilarious.
A couple of years ago, and I can vouch for that. And when you're cutting open freshly brought in cattle carcasses, and you find cysts the size of a baseball that explode when the knife touches it and saturates the rest of the meat in it, it gives you a little bit of an idea of what's actually going on. But that's just only the beginning. And look, vegetarianism and veganism doesn't end at the dinner table. So there's a whole other universe of elements there that, give us reason to...
Yeah, there's other things. When I became a vegan, there was other things I had to start thinking about. A common question, for example, is still in the food realm, is about honey. recently I've completely given up honey, but the question of whether or not bees extracting honey from bees is bad practice or not is something that I commonly got asked, but also questions to do with cosmetics
Yeah,
and
that I
hygiene
find
products
interesting.
and clothing. It's a whole nother a world that you have to start really thinking about and making yourself aware of, because you pick up any bottle of shampoo, any cosmetics, and if it doesn't say not tested on animals, then chances are that
It is tested
product
on
is
animals.
tested on animals.
And cigarettes too, which is
Oh,
harrowing.
this one
to say the
blows
least.
my mind, Shane. Honestly, cigarettes. So basically, what happens is there's animals, mainly dogs, rabbits, guinea pigs, and mice.
Mice
So
and things, yeah.
so smaller animals. I think the dogs are mainly beagles and littler dogs. Basically, they were being painted with tar and force smoked,
Injected with
injected
nicotine.
with in nicotine, and also injected with tar to basically see how the animals react, so that the industry would know how we would react. This is a practice that's supposed to be an ancient practice. However, it's been reported recently by Peter that it's still currently being. Me and Shane would like to discuss that Peter isn't necessarily the first.
Yeah, look, they are a bit overzealous in some of the information they produce, but look, when looking at cigarette companies, doesn't surprise me in the slightest that they might be up to this.
It doesn't surprise me in the slightest either. And basically, what they're claiming is that a bunch of the evidence that was taken from the scientists has been thrown out and completely ignored altogether because it was against what the cigarette
There's
company.
a couple of smoking
before.
documentaries that talk about that, and then you look at things like cosmetics as well. Like there's that age-old image of the pig with lipstick and eyeshadow and stuff like that on, and yeah, it's funny to look at, but they're testing these things on the animals so as to know we're not going to get allergic reactions to it. But how do they know that? It's because the animals get the allergic reactions.
So these are
the
animals
blistering eyeballs.
that are animals literally bred to suffer for their entire lives until they die. There's chimpanzees that have been in cages for 35 years, injected, tortured, zapped, you name it, they've been through it, and that makes me physically sick. Yeah. And so I suppose that's another reason why.
And like you look at oh, by the way, look, there's a couple of great documentaries to look up if you're interested about any of this. So,
I haven't actually been able to stomach these yet, so I'm gonna have to find the courage soon.
2 are about nutrition, and they're great. One's called Forks Over Knives, and it talks about the health effects of moving to a vegan, vegetarian diet. And then there's the other one, which is Hungry for Change. Talks about something similar. But one of the most infamous ones, have a look at Earthlings, which is a free and full documentary that you can watch online on YouTube. Hard stomach. First 5 minutes will probably completely crush your views on how animals are treated, both in for food production, cosmetics, and also things like entertainment, like the circus and the zoo and stuff like that. Oh, it's absolutely shocking.
Yeah, I refuse to go to a circus or even reports about SeaWorld and places that have animals caged. It's kind of, I don't know, I kind of and ah about it, and I even question other places like Taronga Zoo, and I'd like to look deeper into how they treat their animals and things like that. Don't really know much about that yet, but it's definitely a topic that needs to be addressed, I think.
Yeah, absolutely does. And if you've got any of your own experiences or questions, or if you want to debate it at all, if you feel otherwise strongly, by all means write in, and we would love to revisit this topic, because there is so much more to talk about, and I'm sure we could talk far more about this. Like just as another example, like I know someone who works in a hospital, and she said that a good portion of the surgeons and doctors who work at the hospital are vegetarian because they've seen firsthand the cancer that you can get in the bowel and in the stomach from a life of eating meat. And I'm not saying you'll definitely die from eating meat, like you won't definitely die from smoking cigarettes. But you know what? If you value your health and your quality of life, why raise those risk factors unnecessarily?
Yeah, and the fact that we're the only animals on planet that kill animals
on an industrial scale
when we're not even hungry is quite ridiculous. Another thing I just wanted to quickly bring up, it's kind of a more positive aspect of what we're talking about today, is basically that the European Union has been heralded as the greatest animal welfare advancement in our history, has actually made chicken stores, has actually freed 250 million hens from cruel and indefeasible methods of egg production, where they were denied the most basic natural behaviours such as perching and nesting. So it's quite incredible, and I'm really hoping Australia takes a leaf from the European book on how to treat animals and follows in their footsteps.
Moving away from what we put into our bodies, let's talk about what we do with them, in a sense, or at least how we look at them. So I think you were telling me about there was an Australian woman. Was she Australian?
Yes, let me just get that article up for you. Her name is Scout Willis, and basically what has happened, this kind of is gets home for me as well, because it's something that has happened to me recently on my Instagram account. Basically, she's posted a photo on Instagram, and her nipples were showing. So I'm sure a bunch of you have heard about the hashtag Free the Nipple, a little movement going on cyberspace at the moment. And basically, there was a lady, her nipples were showing, and her photo got taken down. And as everyone knows, I also do modelling, so there's been photos that I've taken in the past where my nipples have been showing, artistically, of course. And I've posted them on Instagram to help promote the designer, etc. And one of my photos also got taken down, and I was quite outraged by this. Because that man, what's his name? Dan Bilzerian.
What a guy.
I'm sure you idolise him maybe a little bit. I, however, think he's scum of the earth. Anyway, let's not get into my feminist views right now.
That's okay. He's got a nice beard. I'll give him that.
Yeah. Anyway, the point being is that this man is able to freely and without consequence post as many photos of naked women's bodies and nipples as he wants, without, like I said, without consequence, and without his photos being taken down off Instagram.
He's doing the God's work.
And so basically, this lady, Scout Willis, has gone, hey, no, that's not fair. And she's walked down her CBD without a top on, and she's caused quite a bit of row in that area. So she's been dubbed as one of the coolest chicks around, and she's recently posted these photos on Twitter after Instagram deleted her account for breaking community guidelines. Even though men like Dan Bilzerian are totally free to objectify women's bodies and don't get any form of censorship whatsoever. So Scout's protest is more about the ability to freely post on Instagram. It's about fighting for the right for women to be able to do and have control of their own bodies. My friends probably know this, but I commonly randomly go, do what you want with your body. It's really stupid. It's from a song anyway. I won't do that again. And basically, but she just wants people to think about it. It's 2014 and women are still shamed for breastfeeding in public.
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous.
Yet women are constantly objectified and sexualized in the media. So hashtag free the nipple, people.
Yeah. Like, and it goes back to that that debate over like rape culture and things like, a woman wearing a short skirt is, asking for it.
Which is
whatever.
totally
I think it's fucking outrageous. How could you say that? That's like saying just because someone was middle-aged and white, he was asking to be murdered by a serial killer. Like, just don't rape, maybe. Probably would be the better way of getting around that one. But,
we wanted to just move on to
No, but like staying, especially, this does relate to it, like, and gender discrimination and things like that. Everyone's probably seen that dreamy, chiseled jaw, blue-eyed hunk of a guy who was arrested.
tall, dark, and handsome, might I say myself.
And his mugshot was put all over the internet recently. This guy's so getting a fucking... like a model's contract for sure.
Definitely. I wouldn't be surprised if Ford Models in America actually got him out of jail, bailed him out for I think it was $900,000, and gave him a contract straight off the bat. He's an attractive person.
Yeah,
we're not saying he's not. Perfect symmetry in the face, would be an amazing model.
Yeah.
But
it in a sense is a little bit disgusting at how we esteem these attributes. When you look at this guy, like, yeah, he's beautiful, but he's the example of,
a person that
someone who's probably a bit ugly on the inside because he's a fucking criminal. Like, There's no dancing around that
one. And it's
one.
been proven that he's a criminal. It's not like he's been wrongly convicted or anything like that. He's had past of...
There's some shit coming out. Like, there's some real bad shit. Like, he got arrested on gun charges, but then, like, some of his past is being emerging. And look, we're not making, say, firm statements here, but this is what information is out here. And if it's true, this sends a very strong message. Apparently he was caught up or involved with sex trafficking. So keep it classy, girls. Heavy. Like, all right, he's attractive, but come on, like...
He's an asshole. And basically what we wanted to say is that there's a lot of judgment going on in society today, where people are judged on basically their looks instead of who they are on the inside, which is quite a shame. And this Jeremy Meeks guy that's now gone viral all over the world is being glorified for being good looking, and everyone's kind of looking over the fact that he's actually a scumbag.
Yeah, that's it. And like, this goes back to that age-old example when we look at discrimination, both gender discrimination and, say, aesthetic discrimination. And say when you've got people who should be merited on other attributes other than looks get put down because of it. You look at singers like Adele. She is world famous because her talent just completely transcends her looks. I don't think she's a bad looking girl. I think she's pretty hot.
I think she's beautiful as well.
Yeah, a lot of people have shot her down because of her size. But why is that the first thing that we're going to judge their success and their contribution to whatever it is they're involved in?
Because unfortunately Adele is the exception to the rule, and in more cases than not, people that aren't as aesthetically pleasing to the socially acceptable view of what attractive is are kind of shunned and not given a chance.
And this is the polar opposite of it. You know, this reminds me of when Ted Bundy, infamous women's serial killer Ted Bundy, murdered, choked, strangled, stabbed, gutted, and everything else under the book. But he had women in court throwing their fucking panties at him because they were in love with him. And there were news stories on it, and there were interviews of women who'd vowed their love. And it's not just him. There's been others in the past.
Yeah, and it was something that me, Shane, and our producer, Adrian, were looking at earlier. Basically, I think there's a word for it.
Hybristophilia or something
Hybristophilia.
like that.
There's an actual word for women who kind of had a morbid obsession with men that are in prison.
Like a strange fetish
like,
for
they haven't
criminals.
even met these men, but they've seen them on TV, or they found out about them, whatever outlet they found out about them through.
And, like, they all are often attractive men. Like, you never see them get this weird fascination over... what was the guy who used to dress up as a clown? Wayne Gacy or whatever his name was. He was an attractive looking guy. He was a serial killer, and he certainly did not have panties getting thrown at him.
Yeah, definitely. So I find it very interesting.
And here I am trying to get laid. And this guy goes out and kills a bunch of people, and he's got it just coming to his door. He's dead now. He got the chair. But
I think that goes more into relationships, and we'll keep that for a different podcast, don't you think, Shane? But another quick topic I just wanted to talk about to do with the whole sexism and things like that is basically an article's come out today. It's emerged on, I found it through Facebook, and it's on a website called riot.com, and basically it's about women in Afghanistan that deny marriage. So we know it's a common fact that a lot of women in the world are sent off to be married at very young ages, but in many parts of the world they're forced, and arranged marriages they're commonplace. It's natural in some cultures.
In a lot of Eastern society, and a lot, like in the Middle East, a lot in Asia and stuff like that. So you get, like, it does surround a lot of Islamic cultures.
You know what? I've even watched documentaries on it of young girls in England and in Australia that are actually sent off to their homeland countries by their parents to marry the chosen man. And there's actually practices in place for girls that are going through customs and things like that to alert security in the area. To let them know that that's what's happening. Yeah. So it's quite incredible.
Like, the foundation for that cultural trend is, look, I'll give you a quick rundown on the reasoning for it and why it's not meant to be as horrific as it unfortunately ends up. But, you know, the woman's family feels that by marrying them off to, say, a more affluent man, she's most likely to have a better life. And I'm sure that happens in some cases, and the family benefits because they get a dowry and a payment from
Some
the men's
cases,
family.
though. A
Yeah,
very
because
small majority, I'm sure.
yeah, like because that's what it's set up for. But at the complete cost of the freedoms of the woman involved.
And I'm sure everyone's read this. I know I had to read books in high school to do with women that were married off and had lives full of abuse and domestic violence and criticism of the husband's family. And so it's quite a shame. But basically, there's an article that I will be sharing with you guys on our Facebook page, and basically there's a photographer that her name's Emilio Morinati, and basically she aimed at raising domestic awareness and domestic violence awareness and giving long silent victims a voice. Morinati hoped to highlight these monstrous crimes, but also to turn survivors into heroes who inspire global change. And it goes through and it gives a bunch of stories about some women who had actual acid thrown on them because they said no to forced marriage. And I think that is absolutely outrageous. We should choose who we want to marry, and we should do so freely without the fear of consequences. I just wanted to share one quick story from it so you guys get a taste of it.
So
if you guys could see the photos we're looking at right now, it's scary and it's hard to look at. And it's shit because someone's living that life.
It's confrontational, but ignorance isn't bliss.
Ignorance
You've
is
said
not
that
bliss.
before, and
I completely believe that.
look, it's difficult, but you kind of should be aware.
So this one girl, I can't even explain how strong she must be. Her name's Najaf Sultana. She's 16 now, but at just 5 years old, Najaf's poor's father Najaf was burned by her father in her sleep. He didn't want another girl in the family, was his reasoning. She's now blind and lives with her relatives, as both of her parents abandoned her after the attack. She had 15 reconstructive surgeries so far, and still is in a horrific state. So.
And you know what sucks the most? There are so many stories like this.
Yeah, I'm scrolling down pages and pages of so many stories like this.
Yeah. We'll probably revisit a lot of the issues that surround that. But this just goes in hand with the direction of the show, and a lot of the stuff we talk about is confrontational. But you know, you're listening to this because you want to hear it, basically.
Yeah, and we really want to let you guys know what's happening in our world.
Okay, so moving away from some of the more morbid things we're talking about, we just want to keep you guys informed of something, because something we want to do here is promote and support some local projects and endeavors. On the 18th of July, so next month, it's a Friday from about 6:30, outside of Hyde Park on Liverpool and College Street, there's a small mini concert going on called Busk for a Cure. There's a couple of local acts there that'll be performing street-like music performances. Basically, they'll be busking, but it'll be like an organized performance. So local acts like Helmut Ullman, there's also Rose Winter and a group called the Cordwainers, as well as a few other acts will be performing over the night. And it's both to raise awareness about two diseases, cancer as well as Crohn's disease, but it's also a fundraiser for both those diseases and some of the foundations that support them. So there's Cancer Council that's involved, and the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation as well. So two of the acts will be having their heads shaved on the night, apparently. If you can make it down, it's going to be a great night. And as well as that, there's a trending hashtag going around, Busk to Cure, if you want to follow up on any of the information on it. But this is another thing we want to do on the show and use it as a platform to be able to promote, local projects and endeavors and help people, forward some of the things that they're passionate about, whereas they mightn't really get the opportunity with the way that, a lot of media marketing goes these days. But for any more information on what we've talked about, hit up our Facebook page and refer to below. If you're listening to this, you probably already know we've moved to YouTube. And over the next couple of weeks, it's our hope that we'll actually be able to film our little podcast. So you'll be able to see me and Jade sitting here and talking shit as usual. But until next time, keep all the feedback pouring through, and thanks again for listening. It's been another great conversation anyway, and we'll talk to you next time. This has been The Brain Reaction.